Okay. Oh, does it work? All right, what's up, guys? Jordan Anderson here, and I'm testing out some new software, playing with Streamlabs instead of OBS tonight. And also switched over to a new PowerPoint. But tonight, let's get into it. Hello, what's up? My name is Jordan Anderson. Thank you guys for watching. This is the first time you're watching. I'm a pricing coach for wedding photographers. I help wedding photographers raise their rates, make more money in the process. And tonight, we're going to be talking about something a little bit different. We're going to kind of go behind the scenes just a touch, and we're going to be talking about how I record my podcast, because I think it's going to be helpful for you as photographers who are, yes, you're seasoned pros in creating content in the photography world, in the Instagram world, but maybe you're thinking about podcasts, or maybe you want to get into the podcast game, and it's a lot easier than you think. And the theme tonight is we are going to make this podcast episode, or creating one, as easy as possible. We're not going to have any complicated steps. We're not going to have any fancy tutorials. This is going to be straight down the middle, as simple and easy as possible. So, without further ado, let me get my handy-dandy slides out, see if this works. Playing a little with the... Ooh, okay. Let me get my camera adjusted so that I'm right there in the middle. So, the easiest podcast ever. Get right to it. You know what? I'm freaking out now because I gotta make sure we have audio coming in. Before we get started, 1 second, guys. I need to go switch over here. But since I'm on this new software, I'm running it, did a couple compressor tricks, did a couple noise gate tricks, and I want to make sure that... Okay, it actually sounds good. All right, it sounds good. All right, what am I talking about? All right, yeah, I'm playing with like this. We're upgrading. That's always the goal. Always the goal is to upgrade your shit. Start simple. And maybe that's the thing for this podcast. We're going to start simple, and you can always upgrade and get better in the future. So, the easiest podcast ever. The goal tonight, my goal for you, is to give you the courage to start. You're thinking about a podcast. You've always wanted to do a podcast. All your friends seem to have a podcast. And you're just like, you either feel like you're missing out, or you feel like you're missing out on a really nice marketing opportunity that are podcasts. The great part about podcasts, and I think this is what is the most critical, is that it's weirdly, I don't know what it is, I don't know what the effect is, but you just, it's that para relationship where you like, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but you feel like you know the person from listening to them. If I'm in your earbuds and you're walking around and you're listening to me all day long in this podcast, then you feel like you know that. So like if your client wants to get to know you and they don't feel like they had enough time chatting with you over the phone, or they don't really get a good enough sense on your Instagram page, then start a podcast. Start a podcast, have a conversation, talk about what you're passionate about, talk about what it is that you're trying to accomplish, talk about some past stories that you had as a wedding photographer, and just, it's going to sound cheesy, but just be yourself. And just through them listening to your podcast, they are going to feel like they know you personally, so that when they're on the day, when they finally meet you, you go, oh, like, wow, this is, I feel like I know you. I feel like this is I feel like I've known you for the last 2 months. I've listened to all your podcast episodes. I just binge watched everything, or binge listened. And yeah, this is gonna be a great day. And like, it's weird, but it's so simple. So let's get into it. Let's try to figure out how we can actually start a podcast. I got these little slide switcher here. Wow. Sweet. Lesson plan tonight. We're gonna keep it brief, but I'm gonna cover all the bases: recording, hardware, software, and publishing. Very straightforward. Here we go. So recording. When I talk about recording, I'm talking about recording the episode. Not so much like we'll talk about how to record an episode, but when I'm talking about recording, I'm talking about the content strategy behind recording the episode. I have listened to your podcast. I have gone and browsed for, if I'm following you on Instagram, I've probably looked up to see if you have a podcast. If we're friends on social media, I've probably looked you up to see if you have a podcast, and I've listened to your podcast, and I have listened to so many podcasts, god damn it, and they are just not good. I wish, like, and I know I said at the beginning of this whole episode was like to encourage you to start, but the biggest problem I'm seeing is they just go nowhere. There is no goal to them. or the title of the podcast is something, especially a fresh listener, someone who's never heard you before, has no context, and you read of an episode called like how to shoot on the Canon R5, whatever, like something very tactical, and you click on it and you listen to it, and it's just like 10 minutes of talking about your cat and talking about like, oh, you're like, you had your favorite coffee. I mean, it's like, it drives me crazy. I'm skipping forward faster and faster. I'm like, where is the content? I thought you were talking about the Canon R5, and like, this is not it. So for this episode, you're listening, if you're listening to this podcast, you see the title, it's called The Easiest Podcast Ever, or something like How to Make the Easiest Podcast Ever. You listen to it, and it's giving you content about what it is this episode is about. And it just like this is it. I want to give you the chance. I listen to, I'm trying to get more into TikTok, so I'm looking out for, okay, maybe there's some TikTok podcasts out there. I find one, I listen to it, and it's just rambling and rambling and rambling and rambling and talking about nothing. I want to like give me maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm like super like into, I need the facts, I need the like content. But if I don't know you, if I don't have any context to you, I don't have the relationship yet, and I need you to give me the good stuff. So avoid the aimless, casual conversations. I'm not saying avoid it at all, because you're going to argue with me and say, oh, well, Jordan, that's how I like show off my personality. That's me. I'm having fun with my friends. This is our chit chat time. This is our time to like, each of us get a cup of coffee. We get on the microphone. We start recording, and we just talk about us. But it's not that. It's like, save that kind of stuff for 5 minutes, 10 minutes in the episode. You want to start your episodes with what I'm calling a tight, punchy intro with a clear objective. Hi, my name is Jordan. Welcome to this episode. Welcome to this podcast. Thank you for joining me. Tonight we're going to talk about how to make the easiest podcast ever. I'm going to show you through this episode how to walk through step by step from going from absolutely zero podcast, no podcast at all the way to your very first podcast episode that you can publish tonight. And I'll show you how. Let's get started. That's a tight, punchy intro. Just like go in, tell them what's about, tell them what we're doing, give me an overview, and just go, go, go. Don't, when you're like dilly-dally and you walk around and you just aimlessly, there's no, it just, I'm going in a loop, Brian, but it's just like, this is, this is because the content's good. I know the content's in there, but oh man. So hook your audience. Hook them with something. But when I say hook your audience, some people immediately think like, oh, I got to get this fancy intro. I got to get this fancy trailer. The music. Welcome to the Jordan Anderson podcast. Like, you don't have to do that. The podcasts are simple. Podcast is basically just, it can basically just be a long voicemail that you send and publish. That can be your hook. Hook them with something interesting, something like saying, some like quirky fact that you learned about this topic that you're going to talk about. You don't overburden yourself trying to think of like, what's the catchiest, fastest thing I can say that's the tightest, punchiest intro. Just go in, be direct, talk about what you're going to talk about, and get out. So this is how I listen to my podcast, or how I listen to other people's podcasts. If I know, because I use the Overcast app, and inside the Overcast app, you can actually modify each, what am I trying to say? You can modify each podcast that you listen to. So I listen to, I listen occasionally to the Jenna Kutcher one, and I know that she has a long-ass intro. I can actually program it to say, okay, skip the first 20 seconds, and I know that the last 5 minutes of her podcast are always ads, so I just say, skip the last 5 minutes. So if people are going to skip the first 10 seconds, 5 seconds, like, why even put those ads in there? Why even put the intros in there? When I post these episodes, when I post these podcasts, whether it's an interview or it's a solo episode like this that you're listening to, I just go straight into it, and like, just the best place to start is the beginning, and just start. And I say to skip the last 30, 60 seconds. You can. I usually shove ads in at the end of my podcast, or I'm trying to tell you about the perfect wedding package. But the last 60 seconds are just kind of wrapping up and random bullshit. Hey, thanks for coming. Thanks for being here. Thanks for having me. Skip it. You're going to ask this question next. Like, okay, so what's a good time frame? How long should I be? What's the correct time? Is there something like I've listened to some podcasts that were 5 minutes long. I've listened to some podcasts that are 3 hours long, 4 hours long. What is a good time length? Sadly, there is no correct time. There is no. You can do a 5-minute. You can do a 5-minute podcast and call it the 5 minutes with Jordan, or 5 minutes with this, or the 5-minute photographer, whatever. You can do a 5 minutes. You can do 20 minutes. I do a mix of everything. Like this live stream that you watch here, some of these are an hour, some are 30 minutes, some are 20 minutes. And then I mix in some interviews, and my interviews usually go anywhere between 30 minutes to an hour. So it's just kind of a nice mix. Like whatever you think is the right time is what you feel right. Don't, if you're trying to say like, okay, we got to optimize this, we got to make it like 7 minutes long, people lose interest after 9 minutes. Yeah, they might lose interest after 9 minutes. But also remember, a podcast is a great way to pass the time, and people passively listen to a podcast. So if you make it longer, people might be engaged with you even longer, and that might be good for you. That might be good for your brand. The other, I guess the other argument too with like correct time length is if you're posting every single week or multiple times a week, and you're dropping these big fat 2-hour long podcasts like the Joe Rogan podcast that's a great podcast. That's a little bit of a phenomena, but you know, if he's posting 5 episodes a week and they're all 2 to 3 hours long, that's really hard to keep up with all that content or to listen to every single one through and through. So just keep that in mind. I space mine out. I do about 1 a week, and that gives me a little bit of longevity in my content calendar. But also, I know that people aren't going to listen to 60 whole minutes of me. Maybe they are, but 60 whole minutes of me, and then to drop another 60-minute episode in the same week. I listen to it takes me a 60-minute podcast takes me about 3 days to listen to. I'm listening to it while I'm walking the dog. I'm listening to it while I'm editing videos. Like just listen to it at lunch, while I'm driving random going to get gas or whatever. So don't feel like you have to put yourself into a box and say it has to be between 10 and 15 minutes, or it has to be an hour, or shit, our podcast was only 30 minutes. This sucks. Like, don't think like that. What is your content mix, Jordan? 70% is me, just me, solo episode, telling you about the facts, telling you about this, like what I'm telling you right now, and then I try to do about 30% interviews. What I take is called I'm not coining this that's for damn sure. I take a journalistic approach. I don't claim to know all the answers. I claim to be the one who can find all the answers. That is that's sort of my strategy, or my claim to fame is I can go and seek out interesting people, bring them on this show, talk to them, and share their knowledge. And then by proxy, it looks like I'm sharing that knowledge, and I get bonus points for that. You can do that as well. You don't have to be the one who is the master knowledge person. You can go out and find interesting people, find friends, tell stories, talk, ask them questions, and interview them. And then you get those kind of bonus brownie points by looking, and you kind of look cool because now you're hanging out with cool people and they're on your podcast, and it looks cool. And I'll tell you this, it is really easy to get people on an interview for a podcast. I think my rejection rate, 10% out of every, and it's usually based on like scheduling issues. Everyone I've reached out to has said yes, has been flattered. This sounds weird. I popped a lot of podcast cherries in like just doing these interviews. And that's interesting too. Like, you get to be the first person to host a podcast for somebody. The first time they get to be a guest, they feel good about being a guest, and it's just like, it's all lovey-dovey, mutual benefit. Yeah, mutual benefits all around. Lesson 2. Let's talk hardware. That's the next thing that everyone goes to. They're always gonna, if you're gonna go to YouTube after this and look up like best podcasting microphones, or you're gonna go to Amazon and look up best podcasting microphones, I will break it down to you. This microphone right here that you're looking at. Let me switch it over. This microphone right here. This is a SM48. I didn't even get the 58, which I think is the more expensive one. This microphone cost $40. $40. Got some cheap XLR cable. I think the stand is worth more than the microphone. The mixer is worth more than the microphone. I'm not really big into hardware or big into thinking that you have to have really cool gear. I don't think you have to do that. I don't think if you do, This is like I've talked about this in a past episode. This microphone, this is what I use to shoot videos sometimes. This is $20, and it's just a passive lavalier. So stuff. And yeah, the biggest thing is to watch the filters and mixing tutorials, and there are thousands of them on YouTube. That's what it's all about. Look up things like, what is a noise gate? What is noise suppression? What is a compressor do? What does gain do? Look up what those things do. That's going to help you make your podcast sound better. And the reason I bought these mics was because I was doing remote interviews a lot. I was going out into the world, going out into public places, and meeting my guest in some sort of public place, coffee shop, even like a public library. Found a conference room, just chit-chatted, and these mics are great at rejecting outside noise because they are so not sensitive. I don't know. I'm not a sound guy. I don't know. But dynamic mics are great because they are not sensitive, so they're not going to pick up all the room noise or the PC fan or traffic outside because they are not that sensitive. Get a USB mic, get whatever mic you can, don't blow the budget, start very small. Again, start small, start small, start small. The other thing too, you could just use your phone. Let's be honest. You could just use your phone. Use your phone, use the earpods, little microphone, whatever. What about interviews, Jordan? What do you use for interviews? Yes. When we could meet in public, I was meeting people in public because I found that when you are connecting with somebody, when you're talking with someone face to face, you can gauge the reaction. You can get it real quick. You can pick up on, is this question working? Is this conversation going in the right direction? You can kind of read their nervousness. So I'd meet in person. But if your guest that you want to get is in New York City, or they're across the country in California, or they're all over the country, you can use two apps. This is what I've used. I use Anchor.fm, the Anchor app, for mobile. And what you can do is you can just send an Anchor invite link, and you basically open like an Anchor chat room, and you invite those people into that room. And once they join the room starts recording. You two basically just talk on the phone. And once both people hang up, the session ends, and then it spits out an MP3 file. And then you got two, you don't have two files. You just have one file of the interview. So what I would do to make sure that I had good audio on my end, because you want at least one of those sources to be nice and clean, I would record myself separately using this microphone, talk on the phone, get their audio, cut out my audio from the phone audio, and then sub it in with this professional microphone sound. And that way I sound good, or because you don't want like two phones. It can sound a little canny, a little tinny, not too pleasing on the ears, especially for a long 30-minute, 40-minute, 50-minute interview. And what I have found this year that I've been loving is Zencastr for desktop. So I just sit here, I create a link, I send an invite on the Instagram DM desktop, or an email, or Google Calendar, whatever. Again, it's the same principle. Opens up a chat room, and instead of it creating one single audio file, this creates two separate audio files, which I am thank the Lord that I have this, because that way I can isolate their audio, tweak it, make it sound nice, and then I have my audio, which sounds pretty good, but then I also record it separately on Audacity, so now I have professional Jordan audio, I have pretty decent remote audio for the interviewee, mix those together, and it sounds fucking fantastic. So those are two apps, check them out, and they're both free. When you invite guests to your podcast, don't make them go through hoops. Don't make them do all these crazy steps. Don't do any kind of surprises. When you're onboarding your guests, when you're bringing them on, they should not have to do any work at all. They should do zero. Like, they should just basically turn on their phone, or like open up their webcam, or that's it, or plug in their USB microphone, or the basic instructions I tell them is just, hey, you don't have to have a USB mic. You can use your phone. You can use your laptop, but just find a nice, quiet place with good internet connection, and that's it. That's like the highest bar you should set. Quiet place, good internet connection. Because complexity, if you're getting them to go on, I don't do any video podcasts. Zencastr is like pushing more people to do video-to-video face chat interviews. I think I can get a better interview when it's just audio only. If I have, like me right now, having to record, having to be on, looking at the camera, making eye contact, doing all these hand gestures that are entertaining, if I'm doing that all the time, then it gets like, it's very exhausting. And someone who has no video experience and someone who does not have to be in front of the camera, or they have to put on makeup, or they have to get dressed. Like I've done podcasts in my pajamas, done it on a Sunday morning, recorded, and that was it. Nice and easy. So don't make them go through hoops. Don't do anything crazy. Like you're just adding stress. When you add stress, they stop thinking about the good answers that they're going to tell or the funny stories that they have, and they start thinking more about how do I look, how do I sound, like it just fogs their mind up. Lesson 3, software. Let's talk about software. I'm not going to talk about software that much. I use Premiere, Adobe Premiere, which it's a video editing software, so I'm not using the video track. Some people use Audacity, some people use Audition. I've been using Adobe Premiere since I was 13, so I can fly through that shit like butter, and I know exactly where all the tools are. Audition, I'm still kind of on the learning curve after 10 years of being used to it, familiar with it. And Audacity, it's just not the most robust, but if that's all you have, use Audacity. If you got the Creative Cloud, use Premiere, Final Cut. It's just like, it just makes sense. But you can also use the Anchor app itself. You can record, go onto the desktop anchor.fm and upload your MP3 file or WAV file or whatever audio file, and you just trim it, trim the beginning, trim the end. Very simple, very kind of like TikTok editing. And that's what I'm going to say in terms of editing, that's what you should do. You're going to feel like, I got to doctor this, I got to download this AI app that can find all my ums and ahs, and it will auto-delete everything, and I got to find a way to truncate all these silence, and I got to cut the noise out, and I got to do all these crazy filters. Just, if you're starting out, just edit the beginning and edit the end. Like, I'm sure you're going to flub up a little bit at the beginning, get a nice clean intro down, get into your episode, and then cut the end, because you're going to talk about random shit at the end. Cut the end, cut the beginning, and just go with the episode. If it takes 40 minutes, if your episode is 50 minutes, drags on too long, whatever, who cares? You're learning to talk and articulate yourself on a medium that is unfamiliar to you, so you're going to sound bad at first. So just don't spend a lot of time in the edit worrying, cut slice. You're like, cut, like you just, it's like, don't waste your time in the edit. Just, you need to worry about recording, getting the episodes out, as opposed to like making this one episode sound so clean. It's got to sound like NPR, and it's got to be so crisp and like, just cut the beginning, cut the end, post. Lesson number 4, publishing. Let's talk about publishing. What I used to do for publishing is I use Squarespace. Had a Squarespace plan. That was an interesting feature. You can do RSS feeds inside of Squarespace. But I kept running into the issue that you take your MP3, you drag it onto the web page, you add your title, you add your description, and I would try to format the description so I can get the right show notes, but they had so many different weird names, or like there's the description, and then there's the notes, and then there is the metadata, and I was like, which one is the show notes? I could never tell, could not figure that out, and I would like, it should just be like, I would post an episode and hit publish, and I'd be like, shit, okay, the link's not working in the show notes. So I said, fuck this, I'm switching over to Anchor, and yeah, just switch over to Anchor. You don't have to pay, you don't have to do all these memberships to get distribution, or I don't know, like, when I hear people say sign up for this or sign up for Libso or LibSync, or I don't know, like, just dude, I was like, you don't have to pay. You like, especially when you're first starting out, I don't want you paying $5 a month, $10 a month, $20, $50 a month for some random podcasting publishing app. It's free. Use Anchor. Anchor is owned by Spotify, so you automatically get distribution of your podcast onto Spotify because Spotify owns Anchor. Just use Anchor. It's free. So let me show you how to create. Here, I took a couple screenshots. I'm going to show you first. This is kind of what, you hit new episode, and it says create your episode on here. So, you can either record straight into Anchor, which I've done in the past. You just, I guess I'll talk about that this too, like content strategy wise. I never really brushed over it. Okay. With, make sure I'm actually switching over. I used to record podcasts separately, but if you're able to combine it or piggyback content, like what I'm doing now, I'm live streaming on YouTube. This YouTube episode goes public once I'm done streaming, and then I just rip out the audio, put this onto Anchor, and hit publish. That's kind of straightforward. You can do it separately. If you don't have a YouTube channel, you can go into here, you can record audio, or you can go into whatever Premiere, Audacity, whatever platform that you record your stuff in, GarageBand, and you can record it, upload the MP3. You have a library, you can access Spotify music, you can access transitions, you can make it sound cool, catchy, add your background music. I used to add background music and all that stuff to mine, but kind of got over it. But let me switch over. Boom. You don't have to pay. Okay, so show notes. This is what I'm saying. This was the biggest selling point coming over to Anchor. I mean, it's free, so that's probably the biggest selling point. But show notes, I think, are where the rubber meets the road. And what I mean by that is when I want to engage with you further as a podcast listener, I look at your profile, I swipe over to the show notes, and if I want to click on your link, if I want to click on the thing you just talked about, hey, what's up, guys? Jordan here. I'm going to talk today about the top 5 marketing apps that are going to help you with your business. And then if I can go to your show notes and look at those top 5 apps, cool, sweet. Another great way to share your social media stuff. I'm sharing books and I'm sharing the perfect wedding package. It's simple. You can do HTML. You can do just regular text. And it's just like editing a WordPress blog post. It's the most simplest thing. And it actually works. It actually shows up when you go to Apple Podcasts, when you go to Overcast. The links are there. The links work. You can add emojis. And it just works. That's all I gotta say. It just works. Another great part about this is you can schedule your episodes, and this is what I do all the time. I think actually just my content calendar just caught up, so I have a couple episodes backlog, so I got another like 6 or 8 episodes in the can. But you can publish your episodes on the day of at whatever time, or you can schedule them. And what I usually like to do is you can see here, I schedule my episodes to launch or be released at like midnight or 3 a.m. That way, when you wake up and you download your podcast automatically, that 6 a.m., 7 a.m. when you wake up, the podcast is already there. It's ready to go. As opposed to like if you were to publish at 10 a.m. or noon, the podcast might not be on your phone when you wake up, when you start your morning routine. I'm always there first thing in the morning for you. You can do season numbers, episode numbers, trailer, bonus, clean, explicit, upload new, episode art. It is the simplest, dumbest, easiest. I can't it is just so nice for people who don't do tech stuff, because that's the scary part about podcasting too. Is like, what is RSS? What is HTML? I have to learn all this code. I have to find a website. I have to find a distribution platform. Got to put my links in. This makes it very simple. And then finally, this is another great part of working on Anchor, is you can edit old podcast episodes. I can go in, let's say I'm running some ads on an old podcast, or I have like a weird intro, or I want to go in and like edit a certain segment of the episode. Maybe I want to take something out. Maybe I want to update some information. I can go into Anchor, open up the audio editor, slice an episode, slice it in half, add another episode, record something else, add it to the end, record a new ad, add a new intro, add some like, because sometimes you'll do like hey, what's up, guys? Welcome. Before we get started on the episode, I wanted to give you a little background. This is blah, 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 Dr. This has done this, and hope you enjoyed the episode, and here we go. And then you go into your actual content. You can do that. I can go back to, the first episode 1 of the Jordan P. Anderson podcast, and add in an updated segment. I can add in an updated ad. Let's say I'm, 4 or 5 years ago, I wasn't running the perfect wedding package, but I can go back to episode 1 and add in a perfect wedding package, and you can actually do it. You don't have to record every single thing. You can have a clip, just drag it over. So nice, so easy. And that's it. That is it. That's the end of the Short, sweet, very simple, very easy. Nice. Okay. This is actually, I feel like this was a very successful episode. So that is the very simple, straightforward way that you can publish, launch, record your podcast. Let's do a little recap. I always got to do a recap. Let me switch over and go to the very beginning. So, when we're recording our episode, avoid the aimless conversations until a little bit further into the conversation. Unless that is your theme of the episode, of the podcast, is just like coffee with Jordan, and I just like randomly talk about things. If it's not the theme, then it needs to be tight, it needs to be punchy, and you need to present a clear objective. If you are teaching something, get to the point. Hook your audience. You don't need a fancy intro. You don't need a fancy trailer. You don't need fancy music, highly produced voiceover. This is the Jordan. You don't need any of that. Let's see, what else? You can mix it in. You don't have to, for me, I do 70% just me, 30% interviews. Hardware, don't go crazy. Start cheap, be very cheap. This microphone, remember, is $40 that you're listening to. Sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Learn how to edit your audio. Watch a couple filter and mixing tutorials on YouTube. Again, for the 2 apps that I use for recording remote interviews, that's Anchor.fm for mobile apps and Zencastr for desktop. Don't make your guests go through hoops. Software, I use Premiere. You can use GarageBand, Audacity, Audition, or you can use Anchor.fm, the actual website, and you can edit your podcast there. But don't get crazy with the edits. Don't take out the ums and ahs. Leave in the ums and ahs because that makes you a person, makes you normal, makes you think, have pauses, breaks, ums, ahs, going in circles, saying something that you already said earlier. Leave them in there. You don't have to be this perfect. People like it's the difference. It's the same thing like on the website, like we versus me versus I versus us. I know it's just you running this website. You don't have to put, we are the best. We are this big company. It's like, don't bullshit me. Publishing, don't pay for any memberships. Don't pay for distribution. Use Anchor.fm. Upload your episodes nice and easy, super sweet. Add in your show notes. Make it simple. Schedule, edit your podcast on the fly. And that is going to be it for tonight. Am I doing this right? Shoo! So thank you guys for watching. My name is Jordan Anderson. Hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. And go out there and make your damn podcast.